Hello there. Welcome back to DOPEamine. I am your host, Christian Rivera, and today I want to talk about the four tendencies created by Gretchen and Rubin, and it's all about motivation. And so I want to talk about motivation related to INTPs. I've done a video about it in the past, and I have an entire program dedicated to INTP productivity growth called the INTP Productivity Master Quest. This video is going to go in there along with perhaps some deeper stuff related to INTP motivation related to the four tendencies. And so the four tendencies, to launch right into it, are, let me pull this up and make sure this is on the screen. And they are called Upholder, Obliger, Questioner, and Rebel. So these four tendencies are about inner and outer expectations. And you can basically discern by looking at this that there's a different relationship to inner and outer expectations based on which type you fit into. And so the Upholder tends to honor both inner and outer expectations. Obliger will honor outer expectations. Questioners will honor inner expectations. And rebels do not abide by any expectations at all. And guess who's a rebel? Me. Hi. I'm a rebel in this system, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. So expectations, like what are expectations? What does that even mean? So I see it as, or at least what I've interpreted by reading both the book that she has, and also there's a happier, it's like a happier podcast. I forget what actually the podcast name is. Let me look at it real quick in real time while I'm figuring this out. I think it's just called Happier. Yeah, Happier with Gretchen Rubin. And she's got some episodes talking about the different tendencies. She herself is an upholder, so that's why you can look at all of her work, and she's very successful in getting a lot done. And she talks about her experiences as an upholder in honoring both kind of like system expectations, like school, parents, but also inner expectations and inner discipline. And really that's what that means. Inner expectations is like kind of an inner discipline, and outer expectations is like matching outer discipline. So upholders, obligers, and questioners can sometimes benefit from scheduling their own tasks, and or rather upholders and questioners who have inner expectations will benefit from like scheduling tasks and coming up with what those tasks are going to be. And then upholders and obligers will have a better time setting expectations where they have to, obligers in particular, where they have to meet someone in order for that expectation to get met, meaning that there has to be like another person involved or some sort of other expectation. Let me see if I can just move the Photoshop window. I can pull this up while I'm also on screen, kind of, sort of. Yeah, look at that. Okay. We're doing this janky because I'm a rebel. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And then like, I'll get to that in a second. So actually, let me backtrack. One of the reasons I want to cover this, as I said in the beginning, is that I have an INTP related video about motivations, and I also have an INTP related membership about productivity. And so I want to cover, first of all, that INTPs can fall under any of these four categories. It's really easy to look at this and say, oh yeah, all INTPs are questioners, right? Like introverted thinking, we're going to be questioners. But so far in my experience, that just hasn't been the case. And it's also helpful to not try to fuse these systems together. I've talked about that in other videos, and I'll talk about it in future videos probably, where when we're trying to fuse systems, we're almost trying to reduce them or deduce them or generalize them. When in reality, these different systems, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, the four tendencies, spiral dynamics, you can look at all sorts of other systems. They are almost like power buffs. You sort of combine them and then they have different effects on each other. So for me as an INTP and a rebel, I'm also a generator in human design. I'm an Enneagram 1. I'm a sexual subtype. These things create an aspect of who I am, these different kind of ways of getting to know who I am. And so these different things are ways of understanding myself sometimes it can get more confusing because some things feel like they counteract each other. And that can be the case. Or in your case, they could complement each other, right? So if you're an INTP and a questioner, that seems to make a lot of sense, right? Like you can be internally motivated. You can set goals for yourself. You can do whatever you want to do. Cicadas are always freaking out when it's time for me to start talking on camera. And so you can honor what you want to do, but then when someone else asks you to do something, you're like squinty-eyed about it, and you're like, why do I have to do that, right? And that's, in essence, what the a questioner is. So let me go back and redefine what these 4 are. Now that you have the primer that an INTP can be any of these. First of all, upholder, inner and outer expectations, like I said, is about school or workplace or bosses. Sometimes can be very tightly wound, very disciplined, both self-disciplined and getting things done in the outer world. Now that may affect a relationship to self, that there may be things that you personally want to do in terms of like enjoyment that maybe you don't access as much because you're constantly, kind of in this space of inner and outer expectations. Obligers, and the reason I say that Myers-Briggs doesn't neatly overlap or Enneagram neatly overlaps is that my partner Molly, who's an ENFP, she is an obliger. And so she has a lot of inner desires and wants, but once she starts to schedule them for herself or tries to self-propel or self-motivate, it doesn't necessarily work that way. She usually works with a lot of co-working groups. And so she'll get on a Zoom call with people and we'll check in with each other. They'll keep her accountable for what she needs done and check in with her, right? And so if she starts to set up like a sale on her Instagram and she's self-motivating when that sale is going to go live or when she's going to do a thing, did I freeze again? Hold on. Sometimes when I just close it and reopen it, it'll come back up. Yay, there we go. Okay, magic. Hacking the system. Also, this is a little janky because I'm a rebel. We'll talk about it in a second. Obliger. The outer expectations. So, doing co-working calls or anything like that. And the inner expectations, like inner self-motivation, is not necessarily there. The desire might be there. You may have a relation to self where you want what you want. You know what you want to experience, or maybe you have a sense of what you feel is something you want to experience or you want done. But it's very easy to convince yourself to not do that thing or to back off, right? And Molly has that experience all the time where she'll set up an event that she herself set up. And if she's getting the sense that like no one's going to show up or that this is completely dependent on her doing something, like she can give herself every reason to just not, she's like, I'm just going to cancel it. I don't want to do it. Right. So if she's getting outer pressure, or if there are people asking throughout the week, like, is this still happening? Are we going to be there? Are you going to be there? Is this, should I plan for this? And there's like kind of an outer pinging. She's more likely to get into that mode and do the thing. Right. So questioners, which again, you can imagine a lot of INTPs maybe fall into the questioner mode, but I'm going to ask you at the end to help with that. Because I don't know. I don't have the data as to which one an INTP might fall under more than others. This is really a personal exploration for you, and I'll give you resources on how to do that. So questioners will honor inner expectations. So not only knowing what you want, but doing what you want, right? So if you want to have a certain type of job, creating a resume and but you may create a resume that's like about your skills and maybe not necessarily adapting to a job, but inner expectations in terms of if you schedule things for yourself to do, you're more likely to honor that. Like if I need to go to the gym on Wednesdays and that's what I schedule for myself to do at Wednesday at 11 a.m. or something, like that's what I'm going to do, because that's just, it's about my inner self-discipline, right? It's about taking care of myself or whatever. The challenge with outer expectations is that the questioner needs to be convinced that the outer expectation makes sense to them, or is something that they have to almost let go of their inner expectation to honor the outer expectation, right? So you can see this as a lot of Enneagram 5s, INTPs. It can be easy to assume that you're a questioner, but don't assume just yet. I would want you to go take the test and maybe find out for yourself, which I'll put in the description, or remind me if I don't, because, rebel, and we'll talk about that in a second. I keep saying we're going to talk about that, but I'm rebelling against my own rebellion. So outer expectations is really about asking questions and having to be completely bought in order to do the thing that someone else is asking you to do, right? And I relate to this in some ways as a rebel, that there is a little bit of a questioner leaning, right? You have a main type, but then there's sometimes types that you can lean towards. So upholders can have an obliger bent, obligers can have a questioner bent, but the main type tends to stay there. And these are types that last your entire life. These are not like flexible at all. This is just like how you respond to the world and respond to motivation or whatever, right? And those are questions for Gretchen Rubin. I'm just kind of parroting all of this, but the outer expectations. So as a questioner, you might be asking the question like, why would I need this? And the reason you would need this is to understand why you are not meeting outer expectations. So that if you have a partner, for example, who's constantly asking you to do the dishes, but hasn't given you a good enough reason to do the dishes, and you aren't doing it, and then they get upset at you, this is a reason you can learn this, is a way to communicate that to them, that like, we need to have a conversation about why you need me to do this, or why you can't do this, because that might be the assumption, is that like, why can't you do it? That's the question, right? And having to give good reasons beyond simply just saying, well, it's because it's your job, right? It's got to be something a little bit more robust. And I'm not the expert on this again, so I'm just giving you the 10,000 foot view idea of this, and then I want to cover it in more detail in the Productivity Master Quest. So the rebel, finally made it to the rebel, as I've been avoiding it, because I've just recently found out that I'm a rebel, and this is illuminating a lot of my personal experience when it comes to productivity, expectations, relationships, school growing up. Everything is a pinging against everything, right? This relates even to me being a sexual 1 in the Enneagram, my relationship to being an INTP. Because even as an INTP, I've come across plenty of self-disciplined INTPs. There are plenty who get things done, who have high-paying jobs, who are meeting out our expectations, or who are, maybe self-disciplined in terms of being a questioner and getting some things done that you want to get done, paying your bills and all of that stuff, but still not quite just being pulled along to everyone else's desires, right? So the rebel is just like a complete identity self-honoring. It's like, who am I? And then why do I do this? So DOPEamine, the reason that I do this is because I want to support INTPs who are like myself, who are struggling maybe with mental health stuff or personal growth or personal acceptance. Is really the new tagline, is like personal acceptance, and trying to understand the complexities of your personal experience through me understanding my own personal experience, right? So that's why I have this like bent towards talking about me and my experience, even though I'm not introverted feeling. I'm not an INFP. I'm 1,000% positive of that. I'm not an ENTP. And so the rebel tendency maybe makes it look like I am because I'm very much like, I just want to do whatever I want to do. And while the oneness in my Enneagram kind of has this push and pull with me wanting to be a little bit perfectionist, I'm ultimately settling a little bit more on doing something that's a little bit more freeform. And so as a rebel, I'm not honoring my inner expectations, meaning that if I say to myself, I'm going to get up in the morning and go run, it ain't going to happen. It's just not. It's just not going to happen. Obligers very similarly with inner expectations. If I tell myself I'm going to do something, nope, not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. But for an obliger, if they have someone waiting for them at the park that they're going to go run with in the morning, that's going to help them. They're going to actually do that. Whereas me as a rebel, that's not going to help either. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. Plain and simple. And if I do want to do it, I'm going to go do it. But it's usually about the moment. So when I'm talking about expectations, it's a relationship to the moment or the future. So inner expectations is just really like what's coming, what's expected of you, right? That makes sense. So my relationship to growing up with inner expectations is like wanting to be more disciplined or wanting to, get in shape or wanting to do X, Y, and Z, getting a certain type of partner or whatever. And anytime I would hype myself up to do something, I would just go the opposite direction. I've been wanting to make more music for forever, but every time I have like a mental plan in my head to go do it, I find something else to do. That's just like the pattern. And I just keep doing that unconsciously. And now that I'm noticing the conscious behavior that's happening, I'm realizing that I'm needing to exercise my whims a little bit more. Meaning that this setup with OBS, where I can just like move the window around and I can be, my camera's already set up. Well, I didn't mean to do all that. That's freaky. My camera's already set up. My microphone's right here. Everything's like really easy to access so that when I want to do it, I can just quickly do it before it fizzles away and leaves, right? And that's a lot of advice I give generally to INTPs, but I feel like this is going to give more nuance. This over here, this system is going to give a little bit more nuance to your motivational style, right? And so anybody who's been struggling with jobs and relationships and stuff like that can immediately start to see like, oh, if I've had regular trouble with outer expectations where like I have to go meet someone somewhere and I just convince myself, or I haven't been convinced to go, or I can convince myself to stay because it's what I want to do, that's just like a pattern. That's something that just keeps happening. Or an obliger that like I can do co-working and stuff, but like when I'm at home, I just want to do nothing. Like I just have no desire at all, right? And so as a rebel, I very much struggle with that. Like I want to do nothing all the time. I want to do nothing. That's like the sweet spot. And not in an Enneagram 9 kind of way. They do it a little bit more unconsciously and in a passive aggressive way. Don't confuse that. What I'm talking about is that, like for this video, I was in the shower, I was thinking about doing this video, and I was like, you know what? I want to do it. So I'm going to do it. And then I did it. So I'm doing it, right? But if I let this go on for too long and I do something else, there's all sorts of ideas in my head that have just left. They're just gone. They're just not things I'm going to do. Or maybe I'll do them and eventually, but my entire thing is that I know from myself and self-observation that if I'm going to get things done or if I'm going to go for a walk, I need to honor it when it happens. That means being ready to honor my whims. So even though I don't have sneakers on right now, I should probably put sneakers on so that if I want to go for a walk, I just go out the door and I just go do it, right? Honoring my whims in a sense. So that gets confusing for someone like an upholder. And the reason it's kind of laid up like this is that upholders and rebels are kind of in the opposite. You can see that, inner expectation, outer expectations are being honored for upholders, and the rebels the complete opposite, and they don't necessarily understand each other. And now the last thing I really want to say is that rebel was a term that was created by an upholder. Gretchen Rubin is an upholder. So this term rebel can be disconcerting if you're identifying as a rebel, because it's just like, I'm meant to be a loser or something. Like, that's not quite it. It's self. It's identity. It's like, and it doesn't mean you can't ever do things, right? It's that if I'm doing healthy habits, it's not about healthy habits by putting something on the calendar and doing them. It's about an identity tempering and saying like, I'm a healthy person, or I'm someone who takes care of themselves. I am someone who eats X, Y, and Z, or I don't drink caffeine because I don't want external control of my body from a substance or something like that, right? Like, so rebellions can have this rebel pinging of even things that control your body or other things like that, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of all over the place, but I hope you generally follow what I mean. So for a quick recap, upholders, inner and outer expectations. You're probably not watching this video or watching my stuff because it might drive you nuts because I'm a little all over the place and inconsistent. But upholders, consistency, self-discipline, outer meetings and outer expectations, and really just like the getters of things done in the world. And that's okay. That's their jam. Let them have it. Obligers, outer expectations will honor other people and honor bosses or honor requests that are coming from outside of themselves. But when they have inner requests, inner desires for self-disciplined, it's really easy to just be like, no, I don't want to, no. Then questioners are very much about wanting to honor self, can be self-disciplined, can be structured, can be, self-starters, can be people that get things done. But once someone outside starts to ask them of something or expect something of them, then the questions start coming. Like, why do you want this? Why are you taking me away from what I want in order to do what you want? Right? That kind of tendency starts to come up. And then rebels are just like, I just gonna do what I want to do. That's the long and short of it. I just want to do what I want to do. And that's the way I've always been. It's why I struggled in school. It's why I've had troubles in some relationships. And, despite being a rebel, I've been able to, have this YouTube channel and get some things done, but I still struggle with consistency, and I struggle with, making money on a consistent basis and honoring, deadlines and stuff like that. It's not an easy road. Deadlines give me a little bit of a structure, but sometimes when there's a deadline, I look at it and I'm like, nope. Unless someone says like, I dare you to meet this deadline or I bet you can't do it. Right. That might fire me up. So there's a little bit of a reverse psychology for rebels that is very helpful if you're someone who is of a different type with a rebel or working with a rebel, to give them space, let them figure it out. And, they'll come to their own conclusion. Or you can, if they're kind of a low enough level of unconsciousness, you can probably flat out trick them into saying like, well, all right, fine. I guess you can't do it then. And that'll light a fire in the belly, right? So I'm going to minimize that and this. And so 2 things. One, if you are identifying with one of these types and you feel pretty good about it, let me know in the comments below. I would love to know. If you're a questioner, the reason that I want to know is so that it can help me create more specific content for perhaps not only these specific types, but kind of maybe make a more robust level of content that includes speaking to these different tendencies so that I'm not just applying my tendency to every situation. And then the second thing is that we've got a Productivity Master Quest membership, which is for INTPs to support basically motivational and productivity output focused growth. So we've got a ton of videos. We've got one main presentation, then we've got a ton of videos, and then we've got new videos coming all the time. I don't give myself a monthly quota because then I don't do it. But if there's but usually that's regularly what's happening. So with all that said, appreciate you. Catch you next time.